Hi, everyone. My name is Mike McLean. I'm a Principal Program Manager with the Microsoft 365 Groups team. I'm really excited to speak with you today about making IT more efficient with improvements to Microsoft 365 Groups. I have my contact information here in the presentation. Feel free to reach out with any questions or feedback about Microsoft 365 Groups. We know that Microsoft 365 Groups is a very broad space. There are more than 20 first-party applications that integrate to the Microsoft 365 Groups platform. And we know that the way people work has changed drastically over recent months. Our IT admins are working hard to deploy new technologies like Microsoft Teams, Yammer, and Outlook to keep their employees connected. That's why today we're going to focus on a few key concepts that we think can help improve the way our IT admins manage Microsoft 365 groups. There's been a lot of investments across the suite, so today we'll highlight these 4 areas. First, we'll target new enhancements that have been deployed across Microsoft 365 Admin Center. The Microsoft 365 Admin Center is a place where our admins come to manage users, groups, licenses, and other various configurations for all their workloads across Microsoft 365. We'll highlight some of the key enhancements related to groups. Then we'll go a little deeper into the platform and take a look at some new scenarios that will improve the way our admins manage groups inside Azure Active Directory. Here's where they manage settings that apply to their entire tenant, and they also assign roles to various users across their organization. Third, we'll take a look at how some of our first-party applications are benefiting from a deeper integration to the Microsoft 365 Groups platform. We'll use Yammer as a showcase today to show how Yammer communities are taking advantage of new features once those communities are backed by Microsoft 365 Groups. Lastly, we'll take a look at the first steps we're taking to enable a new scenario called group-driven membership. We've received a lot of feedback over the years. Our customers want to be able to take a group and use that to drive membership in another group. This would help them leverage the organizational hierarchies they've built using technologies like security groups to power new collaboration scenarios inside Microsoft 365 Groups. Let's start with the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. For years, our customers and partners have been using the Microsoft 365 Admin Center to manage various users and groups across their organization. There's been a lot of great enhancements to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. From a groups perspective, our IT admins now have the ability to export the full list of groups right from within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. This really helps improve their efficiency because typically they'd have to build a custom report or run some type of PowerShell commandlets to export that full list. They have this there ready right out of the box from within Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Second, there's been a lot of enhancements built that improve the way groups can be restored. If a group is deleted because it expires or a user accidentally deleted it, typically that group would have to be restored using PowerShell commandlets. Now our IT admins can come to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and restore them from a nice visual user experience. When we look at how groups are created in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, there's been a lot of enhancements in terms of how those groups can be enabled from Microsoft Teams. When groups are created from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, they can be enabled for Teams right from the beginning. When users are added as owners, we also flag whether they have the correct licenses. So we're making it much easier to enable and interact with these groups as they're enabled for Microsoft Teams. When a user needs to make a modification to their group, such as update the name or description of their Microsoft 365 group, sometimes they'll submit a service request to the IT admin to update additional properties that are associated with that group. A frequent property that needs to be updated is the email address. If a user updates the name of their group, they'd like that email address to match the name and the description of that group. That helps all their members understand that they're working with the correct group and they're in the right context. But previously, if an email address was to be updated, the admin had to run a set of scripts to update the primary address or release an address to be used somewhere else. There's new capabilities now added to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, where an admin can perform these from user experience right there. Lastly, we're investing and how to proactively determine and prevent a group from ending up in an ownerless state. When a group has, let's say, one owner, and that owner leaves an organization or transfers to another part of the company, now the group members have a tough time receiving notifications if that group needs to be renewed or or if a new member has requested to join that group and a join request needs to be approved. This takes time away from our IT admins because they have to step in and take care of that request. If we can prevent the groups from ending up in that ownerless state, then it really makes everyone's lives easier. There's been some new notifications we've added to remind our IT admins that they should specify more than one owner, and there's new capabilities being added shortly. Our IT admins have requested for quite some time for the ability to understand where a group is created. This helps provide them more insights in terms of how group creation is being adopted across their organization. When an IT admin sees an influx of Microsoft 365 groups, it's important for them to understand if users are starting to adopt SharePoint or Microsoft Planner, Outlook, or maybe they're starting to use Yammer more frequently. And so previously, we really didn't provide a lot of insight into where that group was created. Over the past year, we spent some time adding a new property to the group object. This new property is called createdlyAppID. Every time a group is created, this property will be populated with the ID of the application that was used to create the group. This property supports every first and third party app that's registered with the service. And once that ID exists on the group object, it's very easy for the admin to cross-reference our service principles and understand which application created that group. This property is already available on the beta endpoint inside Microsoft Graph, and we're going to be moving this to the V1 endpoint shortly. All right, so let's take a look at some of these features in the product. We'll start our demos in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. If an IT admin receives a request from a user to create a new Microsoft 365 group, they can create it right here from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. When they click Add a Group, the first thing you'll notice is we've updated the text that's used for the group type to specify Microsoft 365. This reflects the true identity of the Microsoft 365 Groups platform now that we're powering much more apps across the service. When the IT admin clicks Next, they now have the ability to specify a group name. So we'll call this Fiscal Year Planning. And when I click Next, you'll see our IT admin now receives a notification that we suggest they add 2 owners. This helps if one of the owners is absent or leaves the organization. As an IT admin, if I start typing in the name of users I'd like to add as an owner, you'll see we're indicating whether or not this user has a license for Microsoft Teams. So here we're saying, yes, Adele has a license for Microsoft Teams. I'm going to add her. And let's pull in Alex as well. The reason this helps is because if this Microsoft 365 group is activated for Microsoft Teams, now my admins know that these users have the proper licenses to come in and start managing the Microsoft 365 group. When I click Next, I can now specify an email address. We'll use the same name, so we'll call this Fiscal Year Planning. I could decide if the group is public or private. And here I have the ability to enable this group for Microsoft Teams right from the start. When I click Next, I'll receive a summary. And when I click Create Group, now our Microsoft 365 group will be provisioned. We're going and spinning up all the resources that are needed. We're creating the SharePoint site, a mailbox, and we're activating this group for Microsoft Teams. Now from the Admin Center here, I mentioned earlier, our admins now have the ability to export the full list of groups. This is great because it's right here at their fingertips. When I click Export Groups, I can click Continue, and then it's going to generate a CSV file. Now I have the full list of groups right here in Microsoft Excel. I have all the group IDs for all my Microsoft 365 groups. I have all the group names. I have their description. And I even have information around whether or not these groups are enabled for Microsoft Teams. So this is a really easy way for my admins to get the full list of groups without having to write a custom script or any type of report that needs to be deployed to any other service. All right, so coming back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, when my admin receives a request to make a change to a Microsoft 365 group for an end user, they can select that group, and it's pretty straightforward to update features like the name and description. So let's say that we wanted to update this group to reflect fiscal year 21. So now I can modify this to reflect fiscal year 21. It's still used to plan the annual conference, which is great. And now that change will be saved. So here I've got my group that's updated, and it's going to reflect fiscal year 21. And we provide a notification to our admins around how many owners and how many members are contained within this group. Now, if I need to make any other changes, such as modify the email address, my admin can do that through a new menu item right here, accessible through the ellipses. So now, since this group is going to reflect annual conference fiscal year 21, I might want to provide a different email address that's used. So I can type in annual conference FY21. And as an IT admin, I can now add this as an email address that's used for this group. This Microsoft 365 group will still receive email to the previous address in case anybody replies to an email they had sitting in their inbox. And they'll also receive emails to any of these secondary email addresses. If my IT admin would like to make this the primary email address, they can select the ellipses and click change to primary email. This now makes fiscal year 21 the primary email address. This will now show up on the group card that displays all across Microsoft 365 and applications like SharePoint. If this group is being renamed and we now want to release one of these email addresses because either we don't want to support it or perhaps we want to use it in another part of the organization, I can simply click delete and save my changes. So my IT admin now has the ability to perform these three functions from right here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. When these groups are created, like I mentioned, our admins really wanted a lot more insight in terms of which application was used to create the group. That's why we added the new createdlyAppID property to the group object. Here, I'm going to show Graph Explorer, and we're going to take a look at a very simple query using Microsoft Graph that will return this property. So here I have a pretty simple get query that retrieves the properties for a particular Microsoft 365 group. When I scroll down and I zoom in on my group properties, you'll see right here we have a brand new createdlyAppID. So this particular group was created from Microsoft Teams, and it's populated with the app ID that starts with CC15. If this was created through Outlook, Yammer, or any other application, it would have an ID that's specific to those apps. It would also be populated with any ID from a third-party app that's registered with the service. Once my admins have that app ID, they can execute a query against our service principals endpoint just to cross-reference the name of the application that's used. So when I query that app ID, you can see here, this is mapped to Microsoft Teams. So using these two queries, my admins can now build reports or applications that can reflect the volume of groups that are being created, as well as the applications that are used to create those groups. A question that we get frequently is, will groups that were created before this change be populated with the app ID that was created to create those groups? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the history for where all of those groups were created prior to this change. That's why this will only be populated for groups created from this point forward. So this brand new property is available on the beta endpoint, and we'll be bringing this to the V1 endpoint shortly. We just took a look at new scenarios being made available in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center that help improve how groups are created and how admins can export the full list of groups. We also took a look at the new createdlyAppID property that's being added to the group object that's going to help identify which application was used to create the Microsoft 365 group. Now let's go a little deeper into Azure Active Directory and take a look at some of the new scenarios that are being enabled to manage groups across the tenant. Now, Azure Active Directory is a place where a lot of admins will visit if they need to manage settings that apply across the entire tenancy. These settings might include the naming policy that's applied if a prefix or suffix is required. They might include the group expiry lifecycle settings to determine how long groups could live, or a variety of other settings. Also, it's a place where admins would create and manage very large groups that might support very large divisions or parts of an organization. It's very difficult to manage a large group with a flat list of members, which is why a lot of these admins will use technologies like dynamic membership rules. Dynamic membership rules specify a certain set of criteria that will automatically pull in users. A rule might include everybody from a particular department or from a geographic region or based on their title. Inside Azure Active Directory, not only are there features for admins, but group members can also take advantage of certain aspects, like exporting the entire membership list from their Microsoft 365 group. This really helps improve the lives of our IT admins because they do not have to fulfill as many service requests to generate a simple report like every user that's inside a particular Microsoft 365 group. Today, we'll take a look at how those group owners can navigate over to Azure Active Directory and export a full list of members for their Microsoft 365 group. When we talk about those admins who are creating groups based on dynamic membership rules, there's a few new features that have launched into private preview. First, in Azure Active Directory, we now support the ability to assign an Azure Active Directory role to a Microsoft 365 group. Now, this could be a group that's powered by dynamic membership rules or even just an explicit list of members. The real advantage here for our IT admins is that now, instead of having to assign a role to every single user and try to keep track of a collection of roles that are assigned across a set of individuals, they can assign that role to one group, and they can manage the assignments by who is added or removed from that group. This really helps in terms of onboarding processes. If a new individual is hired into a certain area and they're going to be managing a certain set of technologies, the admin can now add them to a Microsoft 365 group that automatically gives them a certain set of roles. When an admin is constructing a group that's built with these dynamic membership rules, very frequently they'd have to deploy that group and then wait several hours to verify if these rules were built correctly. This takes some time. What Azure Active Directory has now provided is a new validate rules feature. This allows the admin to quickly test these rules and see if certain users will meet or fail those requirements. This gives them instant feedback instead of having to wait several hours to see if it pulled in the correct set of users. Lastly, there's been a lot of investments in terms of how dynamic membership rules run at scale. We know that these membership rules are driving very large groups, so we've improved both the scalability and the reliability regarding how they execute. To go a little deeper into that topic, we knew that there were a lot of challenges being faced with the current design of dynamic membership rules. For example, if you were a very large organization that had, let's say, 100 or 200,000 employees, if you constructed a group with dynamic membership rules, the time it took to run those rules would be relative to the size of the entire tenant. For a large tenant, this could be several hours, even an entire day. The changes that we've made now force these groups to process relative to the size of members in the group. That way, if you have a very large tenant, but you have a group that only has, let's say, a few thousand users, it's going to execute much quickly. This is bringing the SLA down even to minutes. When we look at how these groups are constructed and then processed, a scenario our IT admins were running into was they would frequently create these groups, have them run over the weekend, so all the membership is up to date when everyone comes in on Monday morning. If they had several smaller groups and then one larger group, those smaller groups will get blocked until those larger groups would finish. So now this has been parallelized, so those smaller groups can actually run even if that larger group has not finished. From a reliability perspective, We know that occasionally when data is syncing from on-premises to the cloud or down from Azure, there are failures in terms of how objects are processed. And in the past, if the sync stream encountered an object failure, it could halt the processing of a dynamic membership group, which would then block everything else behind it. So the changes we've made now prevent blocking based on a single object failure, which is great. Lastly, from a scalability perspective, we knew that there were challenges meeting the size of groups required for certain customer segments. For example, in education, very frequently, an education customer might need to create a group that includes everybody in a school or a university. This could be thousands, if not tens of thousands of users. And so in the past, these dynamic membership rules would cap out at about 5,000 to 10,000 members. With the changes we've made to scalability, we can now push these limits much further beyond 10,000. And we'll take a look at an example today where we actually have a group with 100,000 members. All right, so with that, let's take a look at how some of these scenarios work in the product. Here I have Alex. Alex is a group owner, and he's working with his group inside Microsoft Teams. If Alex wants to export the full list of members, well, he has access to view this and he can interact with it inside Microsoft Teams, but he doesn't really have the ability to export this list from Microsoft Teams or any of the other applications that tie to Microsoft 365 groups. Like I mentioned earlier, Alex does have the ability to come over to Azure Active Directory. When he navigates into the groups list, he'll see all the groups to which he has access. And here he can find his annual conference FY21 group. When he navigates here into the group properties, he can see how many users are part of this group. And he can select the members list to look at the full list of members. From here, you can select bulk activities at the top, and he can select download members. This will generate a CSV file that has the full list of members inside his Microsoft 365 group. If a user ever needs to check the status of one of these bulk operations, they can navigate over here to the bulk operations dashboard, and they can check the status of that report that's being created. So here we'll refresh this report. It looks like our report has completed. Now I can select my line item and I can download the results of my report. When I click this, it's going to download a CSV file that has all the users inside my Microsoft 365 group. Here I have the list of IDs, I have the user principal names, the display name, and all the other information around the users inside my Microsoft 365 group. So this really helps make our IT admins' lives more efficient because they don't need to produce this report for Alex. Alex can come and he can run this report self-service without submitting any type of service ticket for our IT admins. So here my IT admin has created a group that's built on dynamic membership rules. And it includes a very simple rule. It's based on the country property, and it shows we're going to be pulling in any users who reside in the country of Canada. So now this is great, and typically we would save this group, deploy it, and wait a few hours to see if it was built correctly. With the new validate rules feature that's been enabled on this tenant, I can add a set of users and test these conditions. So here I'm going to add Adele, Alex, Alan, and let's pull in Bianca. So with these users, I'm going to quickly run this validation, and now I can tell that Adele, for example, would not be meeting the criteria of this group. Looks like the criteria was defined correctly, but she resides in the United States. Same thing with Alex and Alan. However, it looks like Bianca does meet this criteria. So here, she would be pulled into this group, and that's great. So this really helps our IT admins. They get some immediate feedback on how the rules will be executed and whether certain users they expect to be included in this group will be included or not. Now, when I look at the properties of this dynamic membership group, since I am leveraging dynamic membership rules with our new scalability improvements, you can see here this group is actually made up of about 109,000 members. So this is an example of the sheer size we're working with. in dynamic groups now. So we think that this is really going to benefit our users as they start creating groups that are much larger, that support divisions across their organization, and then use these types of Microsoft 365 groups to power scenarios like communities in Yammer. Now, with the groups that are created here in Azure Active Directory, I mentioned earlier we now support the ability to assign a role to a Microsoft 365 group. So here, if I click New Group, we'll walk through creating a new Microsoft 365 group. And I'm going to specify my group's administrators. And so we're going to use this group to define who in our organization is a group's administrator. Here I will select yes to allow Azure AD roles to be assigned to this group. And then the first thing I'll do is specify an owner. So we'll specify Adele and Alex. And now we'll specify some members. So let's add Alan and we'll add Bianca. Now the last thing we'll specify are the roles that are being assigned to this Microsoft 365 group. So here I have the full list of roles across Azure Active Directory. If I scroll down, you'll see the brand new groups administrator role that we enabled over the past year. And if I wanted to, I could include any other roles as well. So when I add this now, this role will automatically be assigned to the members of this Microsoft 365 group. So we'll take a look at an example I created previously. Here I have a set of members that included Adele, Bianca, and Alex, and we have the group's administrator role assigned. So when Adele examines her profile, you'll see here under assigned roles, it will show the group's administrator. This is treated just as if she was explicitly assigned this role. She's just inheriting this from the Microsoft 365 group. So this is what makes it very easy for our IT admins in terms of managing to whom these roles are assigned. My admin can assign this role once to the group, and then it gets assigned to each of the members of the group. When Adele navigates to an experience like the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, she has the ability to see the full list of Microsoft 365 groups. If she needs to perform an action like modify the membership, she can navigate into the properties of this group. She can navigate into members, and she has the ability to view and manage all members. So here she could search for someone like Alan. She can pull Alan into the group and save it. And you'll see this operation was completed successfully because she has the group's administrator role. So by assigning that role to the Microsoft 365 group, she was able to inherit this role, and it makes it very easy for IT admins to manage who is assigned this role. This is especially useful as new employees join an organization because they can be added directly to that group and they can automatically receive a large set of roles. We just took a look at how a group owner can export the full list of group members directly from Azure Active Directory. We also saw improvements to how IT admins can build dynamic membership rules that power Microsoft 365 groups at scale. We also saw how Azure Active Directory roles can be assigned directly to Microsoft 365 groups, which helps improve the efficiency for how our IT admins distribute those roles across the organization. Now Ramya is going to walk us through how some of our first-party applications like Yammer are benefiting from a deeper integration to the Microsoft 365 Groups platform.
Thank you, Mike. Hi, my name is Ramya Rajashekar, and I'm the program manager here at the Microsoft Groups team. We just saw how admins are able to manage Microsoft 365 groups within Azure Active Directory and the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. However, very often, we have workload-specific administration to manage users and content at endpoints such as Yammer. Today, I'm so excited to share several changes to the all-company experience that give corporate communicators the tools to keep the entire organization informed and engaged wherever they might be. As you know, all company Yammer community is the default community that is created in a network, which includes all Yammer users in that network. However, until now, the all company community has never been treated as a Microsoft 365 group object. With the new change where the all company community is now backed by Microsoft 365 group, Yammer has integrated deeper into the Microsoft 365 Group's platform and its capabilities. So this integration enables bringing customization options like editing the name, description, avatar, and cover photos, restricting posts to all company if you want to better control the types of conversations that take place in the all company feed. So when this setting is enabled, only admins can post in all company, but employees can reply to conversations or react to it. Admins can now promote other users as admins of all company to help better manage this community. And hosting live events from this Yammer community is now possible. So with this change, all company community will function just like any other Microsoft 365 group, which means the Microsoft 365 resources such as SharePoint, OneNote, and Planner are now attached and shareable within this community. It can be deleted in Azure Active Directory, and once deleted, this group will still go through the soft delete and then the hard delete process like other communities. Expiration policy, privacy, and data classification can also be changed within Azure Active Directory. Join me now on a demo that showcases the changes that I just talked about. Okay, as you see here, I'm logged in as the admin of Contoso Electronics. I'm in the Yammer application, and you see on the left here, the all company community. When you look at the right here, you can see that it is now backed by Microsoft 365 groups, which is very evident by the fact that you have the SharePoint, OneNote, and Planner resources that are available to you to share within this community. Also, when you go to the members, like I mentioned, you can go in here and pick anybody that is a regular member and make them an admin of this Yammer community. The settings allows you to do the customizations that I just talked to you about, wherein you can go in and customize the name, the description, add a picture, and also change the posting restrictions. So you can call this something like the Contoso Electronics Company top post and make the description a little more user-friendly and say, hey, welcome. This is where we engage, share, and discover with our fellow coworkers. You can add an image and customize it to the culture in your company. And under the posting permissions, this is where you can either choose to leave it open, where all members of the community can start a conversation, comment, or reply to a comment, or you can keep it restricted, where only admins can start a conversation in this community. However, other members are still allowed to react to it or respond to it. So you can save the changes here, and you'll see that as an admin, I can still start a conversation to say, hey, how's everybody doing towards meeting the goal of 10,000 steps a day challenge or something to that effect, engaging the employees. And you'll also see here that as an admin, I can create live events. And if you go in as another member who is not an admin, you can see that this would be a restricted community, and you can like this, or you can write a comment to say, hey, this is going great, and post it that way. So as you can see, these are the various customizations that you can do and the advantages that you have with the community because it is backed by the Microsoft 365 groups. And with that, I would like to transition to another feature that I'm really excited to talk to you about, which is around the group-driven membership. So group-driven membership has been a top ask for years, where our customers and all of you admins have requested the ability to nest security groups as members of other Microsoft 365 groups. Frankly, without the ability to do this, it makes many aspects of Teams, Yammer, and Streams unusable. Managing memberships of large groups every time a member leaves, changes positions, joins, it causes unnecessary friction, especially in times like now, where execs and thought leaders are extensively embracing Teams and Yammer to connect with their teams virtually. Using a group to be a member of another group is a complex problem to solve that needs work alignment and investments across multiple partners across the Microsoft 365 application ecosystem. So we have taken a phased approach to solve for this pain point. So as a first step, I am really excited to let you know that we have an open source tool that now allows admins to specify security groups they would like to use to drive the direct membership of a Microsoft 365 group and helps them automatically keep the group in sync with the membership of the security groups. So within Microsoft, we have been using this tool, and we currently manage upwards of 140 such groups, many of them over tens of thousands of members. And many of the source groups have several levels of nesting within them. The tool is based on .NET and utilizes Azure Functions and Azure Table Storage, which must be deployed onto the Azure subscription. And it interacts with Microsoft Cloud using Graph APIs as data source. So the app needs to be onboarded and granted permissions by the tenant admin who has permissions to create the new Azure resources. It also includes a script that would provision the necessary infrastructure resources in Azure. Now, in preparation for this demo, I have already done the required configurations, so the necessary Azure resources have already been provisioned. I will now show you how to run the scripts to create a sync job, which will help you provide the input and the output group object IDs that you want to use as parameters, including stating when you would like the sync to start and the frequency at which you want this group membership to be synced with the source security groups. So join me for this demo scenario. Contoso has an upcoming all-hands Teams meeting. The corporate communications manager, Megan, sets up a Teams group called the All Hands USA, Canada, and Execs, and specifies that the membership of this group is limited to all of the employees in Canada, all of the employees in USA, and all the company executives. So she sends a request to the admin and tells him that her group, which is the All Hands USA, Canada, and Execs group, should be populated by the members of these security groups. Now, these security groups, as you know, are, as you can see here, are dynamic groups, which means as long as the employee's location is set to USA, they're automatically added to this group. And as long as their location is set to Canada, they're automatically added to this security group. Now, the All Company Execs group is also a security group. However, that is actually made up of two other groups, which is the All Execs Directors and All Exec VPs. And this is what I was talking about when I mentioned that it supports several levels of nesting. And here, the All Execs VP group has another group underneath it, which is called the All Exec VP Mexico group. So as you can see here, what the tool does is it helps you very easily specify the destination group, which is the All Hands USA, Canada, and Exec. And it helps you specify the source groups, which is all company execs, all employees Canada, and all employees USA. And what you need to specify to the tool is actually the object IDs that are associated with the groups in question. So if you were to come in to Azure Active Directory and bring up groups, you can actually copy the object ID right here. And you would go into the the script here. This is a script that would be available to you within the tool. And I have already copied and pasted the object IDs that belong to the target or the destination group, which is the All Hands USA, Canada, and execs, and the source IDs of the security groups that we just talked about, which is the All Employees USA, All Employees Canada, and All Company Execs. And I just counted all of the members that belong to all of these groups, and it's 2,173 members in total. And you'll see the population of that group in just a second. So I would run the script here. And this is the script that's available in the tool. So as you can see here, once the script runs, what it does is it adds an entry into this Azure Sync Jobs table, specifying that there should be a job that is run, specifying the destination object IDs, specifying the source object IDs, and it also tells you the hours, the frequency at which this particular job needs to run to keep that group in sync with those security groups. So here it says it's 1 hour, which means every hour this job is triggered, which will actually take a look at all of the members of the security groups, which are the source memberships, and it will update their destination group with the updated membership roster. So let us move back to the job trigger table here, since we don't want to wait for an hour. And I'm going to force trigger this job. So once the job is triggered, since I force triggered that job, it runs. And as you can remember, what I just said was basically the job, all it does is takes your source IDs of all the security group objects, and then it puts all the membership into All Hands USA, Canada, and execs. And now the script has run, and you can see that it shows you 2,173 members in total. You can see the listing of all of those members. And Megan can now, get ready for her all hands meeting. And if you go into Teams here, you will see that this particular team is also being refreshed with the number of groups. And it takes a while, and you'll see that the numbers keep going up, and it will be eventually in sync with the group membership roster that is in here. And every hour, it's going to keep it updated. So as people leave any of those security groups, if people move from USA to Mexico, for example, that person is no longer within that security group, he will also be automatically removed from this group. So again, like I said, this was one of our top asks for years, and we are really, really excited. And we really hope that this tool, which is a simple tool, will help alleviate some of the pain points in keeping large members and their membership rosters in sync as people join or leave or change positions. With that, I will pass it back to Mike McLean, who will wrap up this session. Thank you.
We really covered a lot today. First, we took a look at new improvements to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center related to how Microsoft 365 groups are created and managed. Then we took a look at new scenarios in Azure Active Directory that really improve the efficiency for how our IT admins build and deploy Microsoft 365 groups. Then we saw how Yammer is taking advantage of a deeper integration to Microsoft 365 groups to enable new features on communities. Lastly, Ramya walked us through the first stages of enabling group-driven membership by running the group membership management tool. This will actually take an input of security groups and use that membership to drive membership in Microsoft 365 groups. We know that there's a lot more content out there related to groups and administration in general, which is why we built this slide that has a summary of all of the related recordings. The recordings that are bold with a star go deeper into some of these groups concepts. For example, if your organization would like to learn more about governance and the controls that can be put in place around Microsoft 365 groups, there is a session related to that. We also have a session that's focused on how we're improving external collaboration with Microsoft 365 groups. We know that the collaboration frequently includes other individuals outside of your organization. So that's why we put this recording together. And we also have a session that goes pretty deep into the new scenarios enabled that span both work and life. The Microsoft 365 Groups platform has gone through an evolution recently where we've enabled new scenarios in Outlook.com. And so we think that these features are going to help our users as they're transitioning between scenarios in their enterprise and scenarios in their personal life. And so lastly, we also have a recording focused on how Microsoft manages Microsoft 365 groups. Very frequently, we get questions around how an organization of Microsoft size with more than 100,000 employees can enable the creation of groups at scale through self-service. And so we have a recording there that walks through how we've been able to enable self-service with governance. Like I mentioned earlier, this presentation has our contact information. We love staying in touch with the community. I really encourage folks to use the resources on this slide. You can visit the tech community to post questions and get any answers you need related to Microsoft 365 groups. We also have a link here to our group's user voice where we listen to your feedback and prioritize your feature requests. If you have any questions about Microsoft 365 groups or the content you saw here today, feel free to reach out to either myself or Ramya, because we love connecting with the community. Thank you.